Haribol. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Thank you for having me this morning, give the Bhagavatam class. I feel rather embarrassed to speak in front of so many senior devotees, but please give us your blessings. So this morning we'll do the previous section. Yesterday Prabhu read a little bit ahead, so today we're going to go back and we'll start with text 3 and then we'll recite together text 8. So I'll just read the English of the previous text and then we'll recite together. Text 3. Having been born from the womb of Ratira's wife, all these sons were known as the dynasty of Ratira. But because they were born from the semen of Angira, they were also known as the dynasty of Angira. Among all the progeny of Ratitara, these sons were the most prominent, because owing to their birth, they were considered brahmanas. The son of Manu was Ikshvaku. When Manu was sneezing, Ikshvaku was born from Manu's nostrils. King Ikshvaku had 100 sons, of whom Bhikukshi, Nimi, and Dandaka were the most prominent. Of the 100 sons, 25 became kings in the western side of Aryavart, a place between the Himalaya and the Vindhya mountains. Another 25 sons became kings in the east of Aryavart, and the 3 principal sons became kings in the middle. The other sons became kings in various other places. Text 6. During the months of January, February, and March, oblations offered to the forefathers are called Ashtaka Shraddha. The Shraddha ceremony is held during the dark fortnight of the month. When Maharaj Ikshvaku was performing his oblations in the ceremony, he ordered his son Vikukshi to go immediately to the forest and bring some pure flesh. Thereafter, Ikshvaku's son Vikukshi went to the forest and killed many animals suitable for being offered as oblations. But when fatigued and hungry, he became forgetful and ate a rabbit he had killed. And now we come to today's verse, so we can recite the Sanskrit together. Shesham nivedayam asha. Shesham nivedayam asha. Pitre tena chatat guruhu. Pitre tena chatat guru. Chodita prokshaya prokshanayat yaha. Chodita prokshanayaha. Dushtam etad akarmakam. Dushtam etad akarmakam. Shesham nivedayam asha. Pitre tena chatat guru. Chodita prokshanayaha. Dushtam etad akarmakam. Prabhus. Shesham nivedayam asha. Pitre tena chatat guru. Chodita prokshanayaha. Karmakam. Shesham nivedayam asha. Pitre tena chatat guruhu. Chodita prokshanayaha. Dushtametad karmakam. Shesham nivedayam asha. Pitre tena chatat guru. Chodita prokshanayaha. Dushtametad karmakam. Mataji's. Shesham nivedayam asha. Pitre tena chatat guru. Chodita prokshanayaha. Dushtametad karmakam. Word by word. Shesham, the remnants. Nivedayam asha, he offered. Pitre, to his father. Tena, by him. Cha, also. Tat guruhu, their priest or spiritual master. Choditaha, being requested. Prokshanaya, for purifying. Aha, said. Dustam, polluted. Etat, all this flesh. Karmakam, not fit to be used for offering in Shraddha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation. Vikukshi offered the remnants of the flesh to King Ikshvaku, who gave it to Vashishta for purification. But Vashishta could immediately understand that part of the flesh had already been taken by Vikukshi, and therefore he said that it was unfit to be used in the Shraddha ceremony. Purport. That which is meant to be offered in yajna cannot be tasted by anyone before being offered to the deity. In our temples, this regulation is in effect. One cannot eat food from the kitchen unless it is offered to the deity. If something is taken before being offered to the deity, the entire preparation is polluted and can no longer be offered. Those engaged in deity worship must know this very well, so that they may be saved from committing offences in deity worship. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachade Shatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so this is very interesting. We'll see, as Prabhu read yesterday, after this, then just for this small mistake, it wasn't even an intentional offense, but it was an accident that he ate. He got very hungry and he had to eat something. And just for this small mistake, he's actually banished. He's asked to leave the kingdom, and he becomes a renunciate. So we saw that in Prabhu's verses yesterday. It seems quite intense. It seems like quite like just for a small mistake, such a grave thing that you're just completely kicked out of the kingdom because he was careless. But Srila Prabhupada would say often that there's a law, and if someone breaks it, then they get a reaction, even if they don't know the law. So the law applies to everyone, whether they know the law or they don't know the law. Someone's going to receive a reaction. But maybe it's a little less strict if you don't know the law. But if you do know the law, then the punishment is often more. So in one sense, knowledge can be very dangerous, because once you know something and then you go against it and you break the law, then the reaction is often much worse. So he knew the law very well, Ikshvaku, or his son. And because he broke it, and even though he knew it, then the reaction was quite severe. So they say that there's two people who are happy in this world, truly happy. One person who's completely in ignorance and they don't acknowledge anything around them, and the other is the self-realized soul who's in complete bliss. Only these two people are fully happy in the world. Everyone else goes through the dualities of life. So sometimes they say ignorance is bliss. So one lesson we can take from here, and what Srila Prabhupada's purport is emphasizing, is as devotees that we should be strict in our external practices of devotion, especially when it comes to deity worship. And one example I was thinking of in this regard is Madhavendra Puri. We hear how Madhavendra Puri, he comes to Kirchhoff Gopinath deity, and he hears that they have a very wonderful offering of sweet rice. So he's recently just installed the deity of Gopal, and he's worshipping the deity, setting very high standards for worship, but he hears that this sweet rice is very wonderful. So he comes to this temple, and he sees the pujari bring the offering of the sweet rice to Gopinath, Kirchhoff Gopinath. And in his mind he's thinking, it would be great if I could taste some, not so that I can enjoy it, but so I can understand how they make this, and so maybe I can make the same thing for my Gopal. But then he realized, oh my God, it's not been offered yet, and I've been thinking about enjoying or eating the deity's offering before it's been offered. And so he really is very heavy on himself, and he immediately leaves the temple and hides. He goes and stays in the marketplace and chants with great remorse, great repentance. So we see this intense level of internal strictness that Madhavendra Puri is putting upon himself, that it wasn't even for him. And I know I'm thinking of myself, so many times we see the boga and, oh, that looks nice. You know, we think like that. But he didn't even think in that way. But he was so strict upon himself. So it's very, very interesting. And then, of course, Gopinath hid the sweet rice, and later the pujari came and called out, "Where is Madhavendra Puri?" And he gave him the sweet rice. So that was the deity's reciprocation. But devotee is very conscious of his internal state and internal practices. It's very easy to become relaxed without certain things, and I'm preaching to myself here. But Krishna's. I'm a devotee. He won't mind. Krishna won't mind so much. I'm doing the rest. A little bit here and there is not a problem. So we have to be cautious, we have to be observant. And we see with Madhavendra Puri, for him it wasn't like he was trying, this wasn't an artificial strictness, this was just a natural feeling within his heart that, my God, I can't believe I did this to the Lord. For us, we may not have that same natural feeling. And one may ask, if it's not a natural thing, then why do we force so many strict rules upon ourselves as devotees? Why is there so much regulation? How do they actually help us advance in Krishna consciousness? And one of the reasons is because as we practice externally, then we become accustomed to this strictness, and it helps us to develop an internal consciousness of nothing for me, everything for Krishna. Ekala Ishvara Krishna Ara Sabhipritya, that there's one Krishna and everyone else is his servants. So these strict external practices help us to internalize this mood that nothing for me, everything for Krishna. Revatinanda Maharaj once told Srila Prabhupada that sometimes on traveling Sankirtan they had to buy something from outside. There was no prasadam available. And Srila Prabhupada said, actually, everything is Krishna prasadam. He said, everything's Krishna prasadam. But don't preach like that. Prabhupada said, don't preach like that, because everyone will take it for sense gratification. All the devotees will take it for sense gratification. And we don't preach like that because that's our tendency, is to take things and try and enjoy them and take them as sense gratification. One devotee was distributing, when Prabhupada was fairly sick, then he didn't eat much, but they would still cook him a full plate of offerings, so they would bring the prasadam to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada would take a little bit, and then he'd say, okay, distribute to the devotees. And he saw one day that this devotee was distributing, and some devotees were saying, oh, can I have the sweet, or can I have this? And Srila Prabhupada called him back. He said, okay, tomorrow you mix everything up, you mash it all together, and then you can go and offer it to the devotees. And so the next day the devotees were like, oh my God, what's this? It's kitchery. But it made them realize, okay, Prabhupada saw that we were trying to enjoy, even though it's Maha Prasadam from the pure devotee, still we have this tendency, okay, I want the sweet, or I want this. And we have this tendency to enjoy, so Prabhupada was trying to teach that. You know, Prabhupada had to teach everything to the devotees, especially in the beginning. Prabhupada was so tolerant of so many things. Mukunda Maharaj tells this beautiful story. Right in the very beginning, I believe they were driving from New York to the ashram. What's the name of the yogi that Prabhupada was staying with initially? Yeah, Mishra. That's it. They were driving to his ashram in the country to give a talk, and Prabhupada had at that time, just a few disciples. And someone had given him an apple, offered Srila Prabhupada an apple. Prabhupada took a bite of the apple, and then he gave it to his disciple who was in the back seat as like reciprocation from the spiritual master, give some Mahaprasadam. So the disciple took the apple, he took a bite, and then he passed it back to Srila Prabhupada, thinking that, okay, this is what we do, we just pass the apple around. So Prabhupada tolerated, he took the apple back and he didn't say anything. But, Prabhupada had to tolerate so much, and he really had to teach the devotees everything, what to do, even just down to the very basic things. Another time, a devotee was in Loy Bazaar in Vrindavan, and he went to one of the cloth shops and he asked to see some silk cloth. So the cloth merchant brought out a roll of silk, and the devotee was looking, and then he asked, okay, not this one, can I see another one? And while the cloth merchant was away, the devotee stole the whole roll of silk and ran back to the temple. And of course, Prabhupada, the merchant came to the temple and said, Prabhupada, look what your disciples are doing. We're in Vrindavan. They have no culture. And Prabhupada said, I know, what can I do? But please try and tolerate them. They're trying. So Prabhupada was very protective, very caring, and very tolerant of his disciples for so much. Anyway, but back to the point, this strictness helps us to train our consciousness. Bhoktaram Yagyatapasham, that Krishna is the enjoyer. And how does that work? Like we were saying, whatever we associate with, whatever we practice externally, it rubs off internally. It's a principle called tadbhava, that whatever we associate with, that rubs off. So whatever we hear associating with devotees, lava matra sadhusanga, this one moment, it's so powerful. We associate with the scriptures, we associate with verses, memorizing verses, and the qualities of these rub off. So in the same way, when we have strict external practices, it also begins to rub off internally, that we develop a mood. And maybe you've had this experience, like before joining the temple or before becoming a devotee, the idea of chanting 16 rounds is like 2 hours of meditation. That's so long, that's so much. I mean, I could do like 10 minutes, sit down for 10 minutes, and that was enough. But then when you join the temple and you start doing it, okay, initially it might be difficult, but over time it just becomes part of life. It becomes natural that, okay, 16 rounds, 2 hours, it's what we do. So that's just an example of how it becomes internally quite natural, that, okay, this is part of my life, I do 16 rounds. Whereas before it seems like, wow. So in the same way, the other practices that we do, they also rub off internally. So it might be said that, yeah, you're just forcing it. Some devotees say fake it until you make it. That's kind of idea that over time, as you practice, then it helps. But we should be careful that we don't swing in the other direction as well, because sometimes there's also a tendency to the side where we're so strict that it becomes almost like Smarta Brahmanas, that just everything has to be in line and there's no mood or feeling behind it. So we should be careful not to be too much on either side. It's described that a neophyte devotee is like this, that they worship the Lord. They might worship with great devotion, with great attention, following all the rules and regulations, but they ignore the Vaishnavas around them. They ignore the other devotees. That's the description given in the Shastras of a neophyte devotee. So we have to be careful that we understand how to apply the strictness and the rules and regulations as well. And we see so many examples of that in the scriptures. One is Govinda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's servant, Govinda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after lunch, he took rest, but he was lying in the doorway. And so Govinda would massage his feet after lunch every day. And he couldn't get in to the door because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was right in the doorway. And so, you're never supposed to step over someone. It's a great offense, especially Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And but he thought, okay, for service, I'm going to step over the Lord. And he did. He actually stepped over Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he started to massage his feet. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started to rest. He stopped massaging and he just sat there waiting, because he wouldn't, for himself, okay, for service he would step over the Lord, but for himself he wouldn't. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he woke up, he saw him. He said, "Why didn't you go for lunch?" He said, "My Lord, I can't step over you." He said, "Then how did you get in?" He said, "I stepped over you, but that's for service." So he's very conscious that when to apply the rules and when to break them. Srila Prabhupada also said that if there's only one devotee in the temple and they're offering arati to the deity, and a guest comes in, Prabhupada said actually you can stop the arati, greet the guest, preach to them, and then you can continue the arati afterwards. And Prabhupada was so lenient in many ways, ready to adjust things. Another time Srila Prabhupada wanted some samosas. He saw some samosas. They were in India, and there was someone who one samosa wala coming past selling samosas, and he said, "Okay, get a few samosas." So the devotees bought some samosas, and then one Mataji in the train, she started to set up an altar to offer it. So she took a cloth, she laid down a cloth, she got out a picture of Krishna, and she's making a whole big scene, and everyone was watching. And Prabhupada said, "No need to do this in front of everyone." Prabhupada said, "You got to be practical. Don't make a whole scene. Just a devotee can offer in his mind in certain situations if it's required, if it's needed, if there's difficult circumstances." So when to apply the the rules, when to apply the strictness. It's very requires some sensitivity, some internal realization. Maharaj yesterday was talking about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as well, and also he was similar in that sense that sometimes he would really adjust things in order to facilitate the preaching. So Maharaj was talking about how Bhaktisiddhanta would roll the biddies, or he offered to roll the biddies for the workers if they continued to continue to construct the temple. Another time there was some British dignitaries which came, and Bhaktisiddhanta said, we can serve meat if it's required, we can serve meat to them. This is in the temple premises. This is like crazy, you know. If someone did that today in an ISKCON temple, it would be an uproar. I'm not sure if he actually did it or not, but Bhaktisiddhanta said that if required, then we can serve meat to these people, whatever to facilitate the preaching. So we see in all these examples that according to time, place, and circumstances, then devotees can adjust things for what's favorable for service, what's favorable for preaching. So this was two aspects. I was thinking of this strict following and how it helps devotees to cultivate an internal mood, and then how also things can be adjusted according to time, place, and circumstance. But then also we see on another level that for perfect devotees, in the realm of perfection, then none of these rules actually apply. For example, we see the cowherd boys, they're eating lunch with Krishna, and they have their packed lunches, Krishna has their packed lunches. Sometimes they steal something from Krishna, or sometimes they take something from their packed lunch, they try it. Oh, Krishna, this is such a nice sweet, you try this as well. And they, they eat something and then they give it to Krishna. So then the rules completely change. We see another example of Shabari with Lord Ram. She was an ascetic, an old lady from a tribe, and she would pick fruits to offer to the Lord, but when she picked them, she would taste them just to make sure they were the nicest fruits, and then she would give them to the Lord. She would offer them like that. We also see with Srila Prabhupada, I heard this from my spiritual master, that one time in the temple they brought out the Deity plate with fruits on, and Prabhupada started picking from the plate and eating, and the devotee said to Prabhupada, that's the Deity plate. Prabhupada said, it's okay, Krishna's my friend. Krishna's my friend. So for perfect devotees also there's different, the rules don't necessarily apply in the same way. But of course we can't imitate this perfection, but we can pray that over time as we practice strictly externally, then we develop that sort of natural love. Queen Kunti has this beautiful prayer. She says, Tvai maina nivashaya matir madhupate sakrit ratim udvad atha tatad. How does it go? Ratim udvad atad tata gangevoyam udanvati. So she says that just like the river Ganges is flowing towards the sea, like any river just naturally flows, in the same way let my mind, let my consciousness just naturally flow towards you. This is a beautiful prayer to develop this natural flow. In the same way, Rupa Goswami says this, another beautiful verse, he says, Yuvatinam yatha yuni, yunam cha yuvato yatha, mano paramite tadvan, mano paramitam tvayi. Which means just like the minds of young women flow to young boys, and the minds of young boys flow to young women, in the same way that this natural attraction happens, let my mind naturally also, Krishna, let my mind naturally flow to you. And so these are a few beautiful prayers for that. While we're strictly externally practicing, but we can internally be praying for that mood of natural devotion. And Bhagavatam says that ultimately any practice, any external occupation or duties that we do, if it doesn't provoke attraction, this very famous verse, Dharma sanustita pumsham vishvakshena kutasya nulpadayad yati radim shrama eva hi kevalam. That whatever we're doing, if it doesn't provoke some attraction, if all of our following and all of our strictness doesn't ultimately lead to some of that natural love in the heart, then ultimately it's useless. It's a useless waste of time. That's what Bhagavatam says. And that's the point of these regulative principles, its strictness, is that it helps us to train the consciousness away from selfishness. Just in conclusion, in this pastime we see that just a small bit of inattentiveness, a small lapse led to this offense, and such a strict reaction for a very small kind of slip in his consciousness, or a slip in his attention for just a moment. So we have to be very careful, to be attentive in our practices, to be very conscious of the rules and regulations and what we've been given. At the same time, we discussed how that strictness has to be applied according to time, place and circumstance. And ultimately, nothing can replace that real attachment to Krishna. If we have that attachment, then naturally we'll want to follow anyway. And the perfect devotees, we talked about how the rules don't apply for the pure devotees, the perfect devotees. At the same time, normally they do follow anyway. In another verse it said that, how does that verse go? Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi. That internally someone might have a certain meditation or a closeness with Krishna, but externally they still follow the regulative principles just to set the example for others. So that's the perfect devotees. That was what I prepared. That was some notes. I guess we have quite a bit of time. If anyone has any comments or questions or reflections on these verses, then please share. Please, Ru.
Not a deep philosophical point, but you read also that Ikshvaku was born when his father was sneezing.
Right.
And that's what Ikshvaku is. You know, Ikshvaku is a word that is like an onomatopoeia in English. It sounds like what it means.
Ikshvaku.
So Sanskrit is a far out language. I'm serious. It said he was born when he was sneezing.
Wow.
What does the word actually mean, though?
That's what I'm going to look up. I bet it means sneeze. I'll tell you in a minute. Someone else can answer.
I can look it up also. Anyone else have any comments or any?
From an English point of view, a lot of Sanskrit sounds like sneezing to me. So I feel like it could just be like I could do it.
Really? There's some other word that sounds like sneezing?
Well, if you're looking for onomatopoeia, you can probably find it.
You just saying in general.
If you say a name with the idea of what the name could be, that's what I'm wondering.
Ikshvaku means bitter gourd.
A bitter gourd?
Bitter gourd.
Ikshvaku?
Yeah, or bitter cucumber. That's the etymological meaning. Anyway. Yes, Prabhu.
Just a very brief thing you said in class, but you have this idea of lava matra that just by it was 1/11 of a second, it's just such a short time. One can sadhu sangha sarva shastrakoya lava matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi, or one can attain perfection. Now, whether yourself or anyone in the audience has some idea about that, because it's such a short time. You say you could attain perfection. It's
Yeah.
You have anything?
I don't know. Maybe Prabhu, let's say something. I'll say something and then you can finish. But I think, at least from what I've heard, it depends on the quality of the association. For us, we might need a lot of association because the quality of our association is not very good. But if someone's in a pure consciousness and they associate with a Vaishnava, then maybe by that purity they're able to pick up so much. That's one. And you see, for some Prabhupada disciples, they met Prabhupada once, and that one word or that one meeting is so potent that it's carried them for their whole spiritual life. You see other Prabhupada disciples who had so much association, they fell away from Krishna consciousness. So, I think it's often more about the quality from my own. But maybe Prabhu has something to say.
They say that in Nectar Devotion it describes that mercy can be given a great soul may give mercy in 3 ways. One is through alingan, hug. Another is through kind words. And then the third is through glance. Sometimes I just reflect on the glance of a pure devotee, how potent it is, how powerful it is. There's also, they say that sometimes there may be, what is it called? So if a pure devotee, if an advanced soul is experiencing ecstasy, then there can be a reflection of that ecstasy. So those in the audience, those in the vicinity may experience a reflection of their ecstasy and thereby experience something very amazing, way above their qualification. Anything's possible. It's so powerful. And just in terms of the principle, Srila Prabhupada says about his books that this book distribution is so powerful, it's so important, that even if they read one page, he says no, even if they read one word, one line, no, one word, one syllable, their life will be changed. How can that be? One syllable can change their life. The fact is that advancement in Krishna consciousness for anyone is imperceptible. There's a certain mysticism around how exactly it takes place. But the fact is that anything in relation to Krishna, anything that's tadiya, that's connected to Krishna, is extremely potent and has a potential to transform. Just like Chintamani touchstone, it has a potential to transform anything that it comes in touch with. That's the potency of Krishna. So someone who's so close to Krishna, so invested with Krishna Shakti, they can do anything. Nothing's beyond their capability.
Thank you, Prabhu. One thing that just came to my mind while you were saying that was also that, like you said, by that potency, just by 1 second association with devotee, then whatever they come into contact, that bhakti lata beej is planted, so the seed is planted, and eventually that will sprout. So maybe in this life they may read 1 word of Prabhupada's book, but they don't become a devotee, but at some point, because of that moment's association, then that will sprout, and eventually they will become a devotee.
In that regard, there's this, I read this last night. Vijay Prabhu has a male group. He sends out stories that are sent into him about book distribution. So yesterday I saw one that was just so incredible that I read it during my class. Did you see it? Yeah. About how it was somebody who was really into football, means soccer, right, in Brazil. And he bought a book, I think Bhagavad Gita. He didn't read it. He put it up on his shelf, and just sat there for 10 years. And meanwhile, he was a soccer fan, and he saw that there was on the back of, I think, this soccer player named Beckham, who was very famous. There was a Sanskrit letter or something, and he said, "Oh, that's interesting. That tattoo. I think I have a book that has those kind of letters in it." So he finally, got the book, took off the dust, and opened it, and started reading it. And he was so attracted, he became a devotee from reading the book. That's how he got attracted to reading the book. So it was just one of these miraculous stories. And there was another one some time ago where we had someone got a book, put it up on his shelf, it just stayed there. Then there was some disturbance in his house. The book fell off and hit him in the head. And he said, "Oh, this book, maybe let me check it out." And he became a devotee. So Prabhupada's books have such potency, and you never know just how they're going to, eventually manifest the potency.
Thank you.
You mentioned how your spiritual master told you that when devotees were walking out with the plate, Prabhupada took the fruit and then he had some. He said, "Oh, don't worry, he's my friend." Now, just just curious, was that, from your understanding and what he told you, was that something he saw personally, or is that something that he heard?
Yeah, I don't know. He mentioned it in a Vyasa Puja class many years ago. He didn't give a reference himself, so I couldn't give you a reference. But he was just making this point that Prabhupada had to teach us so much. Mm-hmm. And one thing Prabhupada had to teach the devotees also was that how special he was. So he didn't often display things, but sometimes he would drop it in just to make devotees understand his connection with Krishna. And so he was making this point, and he gave a few different examples to emphasize this, that Prabhupada was very closely connected. But sometimes, along with all the other things he taught us, he also had to teach devotees how closely connected he was to Krishna personally. And so he said sometimes he would display some ecstasies, rarely, but sometimes he would, and sometimes he would say these sort of things. Other times he said that Krishna is sat right beside me while I'm writing, and he's dictating, and I'm just, Krishna's speaking, and I'm just writing. And other times he would say other things, just to give devotees a glimpse into. So that was the point he was being made. Whether I couldn't reference the story.
I remember hearing something similar, where Srila Prabhupada went into a kitchen.
Yeah.
And then devotees were making some sweets or something, and then and then Prabhupada just took one of the sweets and he had it. So Prabhupada, that's not offered. And and Prabhupada said something like, I believe what he said was that, who are you offering it to? Like, and it wasn't like in a heavy way, but you said, who are you offering? Right. You offered the spiritual master.
Right.
And that. And then there's some. Anyways, yeah.
I was speaking with Shruti Rupamataji. She was Srila Prabhupada's cook, and she was telling us that they never used to offer Srila Prabhupada's food when they would cook for Prabhupada. They never actually used to offer it. They would just take the plate because they're offering it to the spiritual master. So that was their consciousness. She said that we're just cooking for our guru, and they would just brought the plate straight to Prabhupada. Maybe I don't know. She said, "Don't tell that to anyone because we might get into trouble." But yeah.
Just regarding my comment about onomatopoeia, was just that I find that a lot of Sanskrit terms, especially ones with different shas in it, especially kshas in it, sound to me like sneezing. So like I could kind of force an onomatopoeia where even if there is like an etymological root, there is an etymological connection, but not necessarily onomatopoeia. That's what I was suspecting. Just because like Kshatriya, like Keshav, Krishna, like those all sound like sneezing sounds to me.
Sure.
Achyuta, Achyuta, so a lot of Sanskrit to me could sound like onomatopoeia for a sneeze. All I was saying. That's why I was wondering if he was just joking or not. But,
okay,
not doubting the actual etymology, but that it's necessarily onomatopoeia is my doubt.
Okay, you're probably right, because I'm just looking up the very verse we just read. What is the word for sneezing? Kshuvatach, kshuvatach, and then you have ikshvaku. Now it's not the same word, but you still have that KSV vowel system. So that's as far as I'm going to take it.
Yeah,
but I find there's so many real onomatopoeias in Sanskrit, and there's so many words in Sanskrit that relate completely to English. Like mata, for mother. How about nama for name? The same word. So you find a lot of crossover like that, but it's a fascinating language, and it is a very potent language.
Anything else? Okay, we can finish there. Gantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.